63-year-old woman's incredible journey to love exposed dark truth. Heartbreaking organs harvested. Betty Thompson's quaint flower shop, Blossom's Buds, nestled in the heart of a small Midwestern town, was a haven of color amid the grayness of everyday life. Every morning, she opened the doors with a smile that could brighten even the gloomiest day. Shimmering daisies, vibrant sunflowers, and fragrant roses welcomed visitors with their beauty. She wasn't just selling flowers. She was selling joy, warmth, and love. Betty often brought bouquets to the local nursing home, delighting residents who would light up at her arrival, as if she carried sunshine in her arms. The small town cherished her. She was its heart, a constant source of comfort and compassion. Yet behind her cheerful facade lay pain, a deep well of hurt. Her daughter, Sarah, had turned her back on their small-town roots years ago, chasing the bright lights of the city and abandoning her family. The feelings of betrayal were like thorns, deeply embedded in Betty's heart. Just as she was arranging a bouquet one ordinary day, the familiar buzz of small-town life was broken by the news a local organ harvesting ring had been uncovered, operating in shadows that stretched far beyond their peaceful streets. The reports sent chills through the community. Fear gripped the townsfolk like a vice. Memories of Sarah's struggles flashed in Betty's mind. How desperately she had wanted to help her daughter, to pull her back from the edge of her dreams gone wrong. Those past calls for help echoed, unfulfilled and haunting. As Betty tried to shake off the weight of nostalgia, the tension in the air thickened, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. Just when Betty thought she had closed the chapter on her daughter, the door swung open, and in walked Sarah. It felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Sarah spoke of being wronged by the media, caught up in a scandal that was spiraling out of control. Her voice quivered with urgency as she recounted chilling encounters with the city's dark underbelly. A tempest of rage and sorrow swirled inside Betty. How could this have happened? What had she done wrong? As they confronted one another, unspoken words hung in the air. Each accusation, each line drawn in their fractured relationship became razor-thin, nearly breaking. Betty felt hope flicker, and Wayne, could she truly forgive? Could they find healing amidst this crisis? Gathering around her, the townsfolk began to mobilize, driven by a shared compassion for the victims of the organ ring. With Betty leading the charge, the community began to gather resources, rallying around the idea of justice, of standing up for what was right. Benny from the diner, Fred the local mechanic, and all their friends came together, unraveling knots of fear to weave a tapestry of strength and unity. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Betty watched as hope sparked within her community, each smile and act of kindness reflecting her own struggles. They were all fighting against a darkness that had suddenly crept into their lives. As the day of the public gathering approached, Betty faced a haunting crossroads. Would she let love prevail, allowing herself to embrace her daughter again? Or would the bitterness of betrayal push them apart forever? With the air thick with tension and uncertainty, big changes were coming both for the town and for Betty herself. Little did she know, the decision she made would change everything, forever binding or breaking the ties of love that held them together. The day of the gathering dawned bright and clear, but the shadows of uncertainty loomed large over Betty's heart. She stood in the middle of Blossom's Buds, the scent of fresh flowers all around her a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. Each bloom reminded her of the love she had shared, yet also of the gulf that had grown between her and Sarah. The storefront bustled with a steady flow of customers, but Betty found it hard to focus. She watched her hands move mechanically, wrapping bouquets while her mind replayed the night before, when Sarah had opened up to her. They had shared old memories, but the air was heavy with unfinished words. Broken trust lingered like a deserted garden, needing time and nurture to grow back to life. As the clock ticked down to the community meeting, Betty decided to take a moment for herself. She stepped outside, taking a deep breath of crisp air, the sound of cheerful chatter from her neighbors filling her ears. They were all there for a common cause: justice against the insidious darkness that threatened their town. But Betty's heart felt heavy with personal stakes. What if her fears about Sarah were true? What if her daughter was caught in the darkness too? Just as those thoughts swirled in her mind, she caught sight of Sarah across the street, standing alone. In that moment, their eyes met, and a rush of emotions surged through Betty: love, fear, hope. She felt herself drawn to Sarah, each step forward carrying decades of longing. As she reached her daughter, Betty's heart pounded. "Sarah, we need to talk," she began, but Sarah held up her hand, her voice steady but trembling. "Mom, please listen. I know everything seems broken, but I'm fighting back. I want to make things right." Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting moment, Betty saw the little girl she raised, filled with dreams and laughter. But then the adult woman in front of her appeared, wounded and raw, revealing scars of struggle that Betty had never truly understood. "I just don't know if I can trust you yet," Betty admitted, feeling the wall of hurt between them hold steady. Sarah's clenched fists relaxed slightly, pain flickering across her face. "I understand, but you're not alone in this. The community needs to come together to fight this organ harvesting ring. I've seen some things, Mom. It's worse than they're saying. If we don't act now, people will suffer, and I won't let that happen." Betty could see the resolve in her daughter's eyes. That glimmer was reminiscent of her younger self, passionate and fierce. The walls Betty had built felt like they might crumble, but fear still gripped her heart. Was it too late to mend what had been so deeply broken? Just then, the sound of footsteps approaching snapped her back to reality. They turned to see Benny and Fred, their faces flushed with anxiety. "Betty, we're about to start. We need as many voices as possible." In that moment, Betty felt the weight of the choice before her. She could step back, allow the bitterness to cloud her heart, or she could choose love. "Let us fight this together," she said finally, looking at Sarah, vulnerability evident. Their hands met in the middle, a symbol of fragile hope. Would they truly come together against the darkness? As they walked toward the gathering, a low hum of anxiety buzzed through the town square. Would they find the answers they sought? Would they regain each other's trust? And as the crowd grew, an unsettling thought crept into the back of Betty's mind: what secrets lay hidden in the shadows that surrounded their fight? The tension pulsed like a heartbeat, reminding her of the confrontation ahead, not just with the evil lurking in the shadows, but with the unfinished chapters between her and Sarah. Tomorrow would tell a different tale, but today they chose to step into the light together, cautiously bridging the gap between hope and despair. Yet, even as they joined their neighbors, another question lingered. How deep did the darkness truly run, and who among them might be hiding secrets of their own? As they joined the gathering, the air thickened with anticipation. Voices melded into a chorus of concern, whispering and wondering about the threat that shadowed their community. Betty held Sarah's hand tightly, feeling its warmth a small comfort amid the rising tide of anxiety. Benny stood at the front, his tall figure casting a reassuring presence. He cleared his throat, and a hush fell over the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. Today, we face an enemy that has been hidden in plain sight. We need to talk about what has been happening in our town." Betty felt a ripple of discomfort. The topic seemed too close to her heart. She risked a glance at Sarah, who looked poised, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her. The fear of losing her daughter to a fate darker than imagined clawed at Betty's insides. Fred chimed in next, his voice shaky but steady. "We need to share what we know. The disappearances, the rumors, they're not just tales to scare children." He paused, drawing in the crowd's collective breath. "This is about human lives." As they exchanged stories, the painful truth began to emerge, each person stepping forward to share what they had seen or heard. A neighbor spoke of strange vans lingering too long in quiet corners. Another recounted seeing a friend who had recently vanished, her laughter replaced with agonizing silence. Each account sliced through Betty like a cold wind. She could hardly believe that their peaceful town had festered with such horror. And yet, a deeper fear gripped her. What if Sarah were to become one of those lost? "What can we do?" A voice rang out from the crowd, breaking through her spiraling thoughts. Betty looked around. Eyes were wide, echoes of helplessness bouncing off the walls of the gathering. They needed a plan, a way to convert their fears into action. Benny stepped forward again, fists balled at his sides. We need to spread awareness. We'll hold community meetings, patrol neighborhoods, and report anything suspicious. He glanced at Sarah, then at Betty. But we need everyone united. No secrets withheld. This fight will demand honesty, especially from those closest to the problem. Betty's heart raced. Would Sarah have the courage to speak? She felt the weight of her daughter's silent battle pressing down, the trust they were trying to build hanging by a thread. But instead of hiding, Sarah took a deep breath and stood tall, drawing the focus of the crowd. I know some of you may not trust me yet, she began, her voice strong but tinged with vulnerability. But I have seen things. I am already in the thick of it. This isn't just happening to strangers. It's happening to people we love. Gasps filled the air. Betty watched as Sarah's words sank in, each syllable granting her both power and exposing her vulnerability. A woman in the front sobbed quietly, her hands pressed over her mouth. Mom, we can't let fear hold us back. If I can expose what I've seen, we can work together to protect our families and friends. Those words struck a chord deep within Betty. Realization dawned on her. This wasn't just about their fractured relationship. It was a call to rise stronger than the past together. As the meeting progressed, voices grew louder, united in their sorrow and determination. Betty felt an ember of hope kindle within her heart, igniting a desire to protect her community and, in doing so, find her way back to Sarah. But just as the energy surged, a movement at the far edge of the crowd caught her eye. A hooded figure slipped away into the shadows, glancing back as if watching, listening. Who was that? She whispered to Sarah, who stiffened beside her. I don't know, Sarah replied, her eyes narrowing. But I think we just might need to find out. The fight had begun, but unbeknownst to them, another layer of darkness loomed closer, ready to reveal secrets that challenged everything they thought they knew. What truth lay buried beneath their town's surface, just waiting to be unearthed? The crowd began to disperse as the meeting came to an end, yet the uncertainty lingered in the air like a storm cloud overhead. Betty felt an urgent tug at her heart as she caught sight of the hooded figure again, just at the edge of the gathering, partially hidden behind a tree. Stay here, she whispered urgently to Sarah. I'll be right back. Before Sarah could protest, Betty moved quickly, her resolve growing with each step. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, a mix of fear and determination propelling her forward. She pushed through the remaining crowd, which was still buzzing with anxious chatter, and slipped into the shadows where the figure had vanished. Excuse me, she called out, her voice trembling slightly with uncertainty. The figure halted, and for an instant, Betty felt a rush of courage. Who are you? She demanded, stepping closer. Just as she did, the figure turned, revealing a face ghostly white beneath the hood. I'm nobody, the figure said, its voice low and gravelly. Just someone who knows too much. Betty's heart raced. Too much about what? These disappearances? The figure hesitated, eyes darting around as if ensuring no one else was listening. You're digging into places you shouldn't, into shadows that are best left undisturbed. She could feel the hairs on her arms stand up. We have to know. People are missing, and we can't just ignore it. Sometimes, ignorance is safer, the figure replied cryptically, shifting backward. Panic surged within her, the sense of danger almost palpable. Wait, I don't understand. Betty took a step forward, determined. We're here to help, to protect our families. You can't just walk away. But the figure moved swiftly, disappearing into the deeper shadows of the trees surrounding the park. Mom. Sarah's voice broke through the static in her ears. Betty turned, her heart still pounding, and found Sarah rushing towards her, worry etched across her face. Did you find out who it was? She asked, breathlessly. No. Betty shook her head, frustration bubbling to the surface. They wouldn't say anything, just warn me away. Sarah frowned, glancing back toward where the figure had vanished. We should tell Benny. He needs to know that someone else is involved, someone who is clearly scared. As they made their way back to the parking lot, Betty felt the fragile thread of hope they had built starting to fray. The gravity of their situation pressed down on her like a heavy weight. What if that person knows more than we do? Then we need to find out who they are. Sarah's voice held a fierce determination that ignited a spark within Betty. If they know about the disappearances, we can't let that go. And if they're afraid, there must be a reason. Their plan formed in silence, a shared understanding taking root. They would become investigators in their own lives, facing whatever shadows lay ahead. But as they reached the parking area, Benny approached them with a furrowed brow, looking more serious than ever. "Did you see something?" he asked, urgency edging his tone. Before Betty could respond, a distant wail split the air, echoing in the night like a siren. It sent a chill racing down her spine. "What was that?" she gasped, instinctively grasping Sarah's hand. Benny shook his head, his expression narrowed. "We need to check it out now." They turned instinctively, their unity stronger than fear, knowing they were stepping further into the unknown. But with every step, a question loomed larger. What had they truly awakened in their desperate pursuit for truth? With hearts pounding, they braced themselves for whatever came next. The darkness awaited, promising revelations that could change everything. What secrets were hiding in the heart of their town, and would they be ready to face them? The three of them walked toward the sound, each step heavier than the last. The night was thick with uncertainty, the moon barely visible behind ominous clouds. Betty squeezed Sarah's hand, trying to pull strength from her daughter's presence. "This could be dangerous," Benny muttered, glancing over his shoulder as if the shadows had ears. "Are you too sure about this?" Betty nodded, her resolve crystallizing. "We have to find out what's happening. If there's a chance if someone might be in trouble, we can't just walk away." Suddenly, the wail pierced the air again. It was closer now. The sound was raw, filled with a haunting despair. It echoed in the corners of her mind, twisting knots in her stomach as they followed the noise deeper into the park. The trees loomed over them like sentinels, their branches like twisted fingers pointing towards the heart of the darkness. "Keep your eyes open," Benny said, his voice steady. "We don't know what we're walking into." They rounded a bend, and the clearing opened before them. In the center, a small figure hunched over, silhouetted by the dim light of a street lamp. Betty squinted, trying to make out details. Her heart raced. "Is that?" "It looks like a person," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and empathy. Benny took the lead, stepping cautiously towards the figure. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice cut through the tension, offering a lifeline into the eerie silence. The figure stirred, slowly raising its head. A woman, her face streaked with tears, was rocking back and forth. "Please help me," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "They took him. I couldn't stop them." Betty's heart sank. "Who took who?" The woman looked up fully now, her eyes wild and fearful. "My son. He was just here, and they took him." I tried to scream. They said they'd come back. The desperate plea sent shivers down Betty's spine. "What do you mean they?" "The hooded ones," the woman gasped, clutching her knees tightly. "I don't know what they did to him, but they promised they'd take us next. We have to hurry." Bit by bit, the pieces of a chilling puzzle began to fall into place. Just as Betty was about to ask for more information, footsteps stirred in the underbrush behind them. They spun around, heartbeats quickening. Shadows danced among the trees as tall forms emerged. "Get back!" Benny barked, instinctively positioning himself in front of Sarah and Betty. The air crackled with tension as the figures drew nearer, cloaked in the same dark garb as the one Betty had seen earlier. "Leave her alone," Betty shouted, her voice carrying a new ferocity. She could feel the adrenaline building again, pushing her to defend the woman hunched in fear. One of the figures stepped forward, its movements fluid and assured. "You shouldn't have come here," it warned, voice smooth like oil. "You're not prepared for what you'll find." "Neither were you," Betty shot back, fueled by a mix of anger and fear. But as they faced off, the wail began to echo again, this time not coming from the woman but from somewhere deeper in the woods, a terrible sound that seemed to beckon them closer. "What is that?" Sarah shouted, her grip tightening on her mother's hand. Betty's mind raced, battling the impulse to flee and the need to uncover the truth. "We can't back down now. Someone needs us." The figures advanced, their intentions unclear. Benny stood firm, but the sound swelled, a haunting melody that seemed to invite them into the darkness. What lay ahead was a mystery cloaked in terror, and Betty could feel the weight of their decision. Were they unearthing a truth, or digging their own graves? As the haunting wail reverberated in the chilling night air, a single thought burned in Betty's mind. Some truths are worth the risk, but what if this truth threatened everything they held dear? The moment loomed. Would they step further into the abyss? As if in response, The shadow figures closed in, and Betty realized the next move would change everything. Betty held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as the cloaked figures pressed closer. There was no retreat now, not when the woman had just shared her bone-chilling story. She could feel the fear curling around her like a thick fog, but inside her, something else roared to life, fierce determination. "What do you want?" Benny demanded, stepping further forward, his voice ringing out like a siren. "She just needs help." The figure who had spoken earlier raised a gloved hand. "We ask for nothing from you," it replied, a hint of malice underlying the calm tone. "Your presence complicates matters." A shiver raced down Betty's spine as she saw flickers of light dancing around the treetops, a flicker that didn't belong there. "What was that?" she muttered, confusion and fear warring within her. But the wail from deeper in the woods grew louder, stronger. It cried out again, a desperate plea laced with anguish that tugged at something deep within her. "Enough of this," one of the figures said, moving faster now, silhouetted against the faint glimmer. "It's time for you to leave." "No," shouted Betty, stepping forward. "We can't leave without helping her." She couldn't shake the feeling that every heartbeat spent toying with the shadows was time wasted. "You're taking something that doesn't belong to you." The figures halted, their movements no longer fluid but caught in an uncertain, lingering hesitation. It was enough to buy time. "Please," the woman rasped, her voice shaky but strained with desperation. "You don't understand. They're not like us. They can come in the night and take anyone." Betty felt her breath catch in her throat. "Take anyone? Like your son?" The woman nodded, tears gleaming in her eyes. "He was just playing. I thought he was safe. The hooded ones, they took him from the park last week. I thought I could fight them, but they just laughed. They said they have special plans. What do they want from us?" A sudden flare of anger surged through Betty. "What plans?" But before the woman could answer, the figure's voice sliced through the air again. "You need to go now before it's too late." A wave of anxiety crashed over her. What did they mean? What would they do to her, to Sarah, or to Benny if they didn't leave? "What if we don't?" Benny shot back, fist clenched. "Then you will find what you did not wish for," the figure replied ominously, taking another step forward. Betty glanced at Sarah, the fear etched across her daughter's face mirrored her own. "Mom," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with dread. "I feel something powerful." Betty opened her mouth to speak, but another wail pierced the air again, echoing right through her bones. It was urgent, twisted, as if it clawed at her to approach. "What is it?" she shouted into the darkness, praying for an answer that might make sense of all this. But instead, the figures merely watched, the night air thick with their anticipation. In the space of a heartbeat, Betty knew they were at a crossroads. Back away and save themselves, or plunge into the darkness and possibly save another soul. "Let us find them," she whispered to Benny, determination lacing her voice. "We have to know." Before Benny could respond, the shadows shifted, and the wail crescendoed into a chilling scream that cut through the trees. "It's too late to go back," Benny said, his features hardened with resolve. "We need to move, now?" As they made the decision to step deeper into the woods, the shadows suddenly surged, surrounding them with a tightness that felt almost suffocating. Betty felt her heart race as the figures began to chant in low, guttural tones. A clamor of voices that seemed to ripple through the air sent tremors of fear into her very core. What had they unleashed? With every step they took into the inky blackness, Betty sensed time slipping through their fingers, like grains of sand caught in the wind. The looming shadows closed in around them, but one question blared louder than the rest in her mind. Would they find the truth or become part of the darkness themselves? As they moved forward into the swirling shadows, she braced herself for whatever lay ahead, knowing this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about a little boy who needed them, and the cost of their discovery would be higher than any of them could comprehend. The darkness thickened around them, an undeniable pressure that seemed to creep into their bones. Betty's breaths quickened. Every inhale tasted cold and bitter, like the scent of impending doom. Benny and Sarah flanked her, their eyes wide and glistening with a cocktail of bravery and terror. "Keep close," Betty urged as panic gnawed at her resolve. The chant from the cloaked figures grew louder and more rhythmic, casting an unsettling spell over the woods, wrapping around them like an invisible chain. She could feel a strange energy pulsing beneath her skin, drawing her forward even as every instinct screamed to retreat. "Can you hear it?" Benny whispered, his voice tight with uncertainty. "It sounds alive." Betty nodded, trying to push back the chills that crawled up her spine. The wail transformed into a chorus of voices, one filled with despair, another echoing laughter that made her stomach churn. It was both haunting and intoxicating, a siren-esque call that triggered her deep-seated need to protect. "Just a little further," she coaxed, tentatively stepping forward, her heart thundering in her chest. Each footfall stirred the leaves beneath them, filling the air with whispers that felt as if they were pulling at her soul. What lay ahead? Would it be a rescue or a reckoning? Above them, the branches twisted into unnatural shapes, shadows of capering figures circling overhead. Betty swallowed hard, her thoughts flickering back to that woman, the mother who had pleaded for help. She couldn't leave without at least trying to save the boy, the one who had been taken. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed to their right, making them all jump. Betty's throat constricted. A silhouette emerged from the gloom. Heart racing, she squinted into the darkness. "Is it?" Sarah gasped, grasping Betty's arm tightly. "I don't know," she breathed, inching closer, curiosity and dread battling within her. But what emerged was not the boy, not a ghost, but just another layer of shadow, an unsettling figure shrouded in long, flowing rags. It stopped short, tilting its head in a manner that suggested it was discerning what it should do with them. "Turn back," it intoned, the sound raspy and echoing. "While you still can." "No," Betty replied, her voice shaky yet firm. "We're not leaving until we know the truth." She stepped forward again, emboldened by the flicker of hope igniting within her. The figure shifted, its body expanding and contracting as if caught between two worlds. "You do not wish to see what lies beyond," it warned. But the words only fueled Betty's resolve. "What are you hiding?" she pressed. "Why are you taking those children?" A moment of stillness ensued, and the figure hesitated, almost as if it was weighing her words. Betty's heart raced with anticipation, desperate for answers. She felt the tension in the air intensify. From behind, Benny whispered, "Mom, we shouldn't, but Betty wouldn't stop now. We're not frightened. Show us." Without warning, the air thickened with an electricity that prickled against her skin. The ground underfoot began to tremble, and all around them, the shadows warped and writhed as the cloaked figures intensified their chanting. "What have you done?" Sarah cried, her voice slicing through the chaos. Suddenly, the ground split open with a thunderous roar, revealing what looked like a swirling abyss. Betty shielded Sarah with her body as the air hissed with dark energy. In that split second, she saw glimpses of faces, many faces twisted in anguish and fear, haunting souls trapped in this waking nightmare. The realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. They weren't just hiding darkness, they were harboring lost souls. "Benny, Sarah, we have to help them," she shouted, reaching into the void, as it pulled at them with sinister intent. But how? Courage surged within her as she steeled herself. The figures continued to chant, their voices rising to meet the chaotic symphony of the shadows. She could feel the pain of those trapped deep within her heart. As she pulled at the darkness, determination resonating in her chest, a voice echoed. From the pit below, "If you wish to save them, you must pay the price. What will you sacrifice?" Betty's mind raced. What would she give for the chance to prevail? Could they truly emerge from this alive, or was sacrifice their only option? With her heart pounding and uncertainty looming over them, she held her breath, the weight of the moment pressing in. What was the price she was willing to pay for the chance to save the boy, to save them all? The air crackled with anticipation, and a creeping dread settled in her stomach, because how could she know the cost until she faced the truth? Betty's heart raced, pumping with adrenaline and fear. The swirling abyss loomed before them, an endless void filled with despair. She wanted to scream, to flee, but the vision of the boy pulled her forward. She looked at Benny and Sarah, their faces pale, but determined. "Listen, we can't just leave them," she urged, glancing at the shadowed figure that still stood ominously, its eyes glinting like stars in the night. "We can't leave anyone behind. The price, the price." The voice from the pit echoed, reverberating around them. It felt like a challenge, tempting her to engage further. "What do you mean, price?" Betty shot back, bewildered. What do we have to give? The figure moved closer, the air thickening and swirling around it like a storm. Your lives for their freedom. Sacrifice must be made. Benny clutched Sarah's hand tightly, and Betty noticed the fear creeping in. She had to stay strong for them. No, we're not just going to give up our lives. There has to be another way. Suddenly, the faces from the void swirled around her, each contorted in anguish. She recognized the feelings etched in their expressions: fear, loneliness, a desperate need for release. It was overwhelming. Look at them, Betty. Benny shouted, his voice cracking. What if we don't do something? She felt the weight of his words crash into her heart like a tidal wave. But what can we do? The chanting grew in intensity, and a deep rumble echoed through the woods. Shadows danced around them, mocking their hesitation. Sacrifice, the figure hissed again, its voice like nails scraping against stone. What will you give? In that moment, a flicker of an idea sparked in Betty's mind. What if she breathed, her mind racing? What if I don't sacrifice my life, but something of equal value: my pain, my memories? The figure drew back, its expression unreadable. A worthy proposition, but the cost of memories can lead to greater darkness. Are you prepared? Betty hesitated. Could she lose her past? Would that change her future? She thought of the good moments, laughter shared, love felt, tears shed. The thought of losing it all terrified her, yet the faces filled with sorrow sang the melody of her heart, urging her to act. Yes, she shouted, her voice resolute. I'm willing to sacrifice them. They've weighed me down for too long. If that's what it takes, I'll do it. For the boy, for all of them. Benny and Sarah exchanged wide-eyed glances. Mom, no? Sarah cried, shaking her head fervently. Yes, right, Benny chimed in, voice firm despite the fear behind it. Don't do this alone. We're a family. If you're sacrificing your memories, we need to do it together. What do you mean? The figure loomed over them, intrigued yet skeptical. If this is the price, we'll all give what we need, Benny declared, fire igniting in his eyes. But we'll do it together. Betty's heart swelled with pride. You're both willing? To risk it all to save the boy? The chanting faded as the figures paused, their eyes now reflecting something different: curiosity. Yes, we need to forge a different path, Sarah affirmed. Together, we're stronger. The ground beneath them began to quake, the rift gaping wider, shadows swirling, seeking to pull them in. The moment crackled with electric tension as they stepped closer to the abyss, hands clasped tightly. Are you ready to pay the price? The voice boomed as the shadows shifted like restless waves. Yes, they exclaimed in unison, resolute and fearless. Just as they prepared to let go, an eerie calm washed over the chaos, the dark energy swirling slow and deliberate, almost as if contemplating their offer. Your sacrifice will change everything, but be warned, you will feel the weight of what has been lost. But in that moment, a shivering thrill coursed through Betty. Was she truly ready to rewrite their destinies? With the world teetering on the brink, she took a deep breath, feeling the connection among them pulse strong. Together, they whispered, together, and as they leaned into the gaping darkness, the silhouette let out a cacophony of laughter, a sound both terrifying and exhilarating. What awaited them on the other side? Would they lose everything they knew, or would they find a way to win back the lost? With hope entwined with trepidation, they stepped into the unknown, uniting against whatever darkness lay ahead. As they plunged into the darkness, Betty felt an odd sensation wash over her. It was as if the shadows wrapped around them like a heavy blanket, but instead of suffocating her, they felt strangely warm, almost comforting. She could hear Benny's heartbeat pounding in sync with hers, and it steadied her racing thoughts. Where were they? What was happening? The cacophony of laughter faded, replaced by an almost serene silence that enveloped them. A faint glow emerged, revealing a vast, ethereal landscape. It wasn't the sharp edges of despair they had feared. Instead, shifting hues of violet and sapphire danced in the air. Trees made of light twisted gracefully, their branches sparkling like constellations. The air was sweet with an aroma Betty had never encountered, a mix of wildflowers and rain-soaked earth. Is this where we are supposed to be? Sarah's voice was soft, a hint of awe settling in. I think so, Benny stuttered, looking around in wonder. It feels so different here. But as breathtaking as it was, a weight pressed down on Betty's chest. They had made a deal. Memories didn't just vanish without a trace. What would they lose? Would they still be able to laugh together, share inside jokes, reminisce about silly moments? Or would those pieces of their lives shatter into fragments, leaving them with gaps that could never be filled? Remember what the figure said, Benny reminded. The weight of what has been lost, let us not think of what we may lose, Betty said, more to herself than to her children. Let us focus on why we did this. She glanced into the expansive light. We're here for him. The boy trapped in the pit. We have to find him. As if conjured by her words, a figure appeared from the shimmering trees. A young boy, no older than 10, stepped forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. His skin glowed softly, like the light surrounding him. Are you here to save me? He asked, his voice tremulous. Yes, Betty exclaimed, her heart pouring out toward him. We're here to help you get back. We'll walk this path together. She reached out her hand, feeling the warmth radiate from her heart. But then, the boy hesitated, his expression shifting. But to return, you must leave something behind. What do you mean? Sarah stepped closer, determination fueling her voice. We're not leaving anyone behind. The boy paused. It's not always a tangible thing. Sometimes it's a feeling, a piece of your heart. Betty felt her stomach drop. What kind of peace? What will it do to us? Only you can decide. But once taken, it's gone forever. An uneasy silence lingered among them, the weight of the boy's words heavy in the air. Betty felt as if the very ground beneath them was shifting, threatening to open her heart like a book with missing pages. How would they weather this storm together? I'll do it, Benny declared, his small face set in resolve. I'll give whatever it takes. Benny, no? Betty reached for him, but Sarah held her back, eyes filled with something deeper than fear, understanding. Mom, it may be the only way. If we must, then we each have to be prepared to give something. Betty looked at them, those fierce young faces she'd fought so hard to protect. Were they ready to lose parts of themselves? Who would they become? As if sensing her turmoil, the boy stepped closer, his small hand trembling. You must choose quickly. The light won't wait forever. Betty felt the pull of the moment, the urgency hanging thick in the air. Would they make their choice together, or would this shatter the bond they'd fought so hard to maintain? They faced each other, waiting for a sign of what to do next. How could they make such a monumental decision? And if they did, would it tear them apart forever? The light around them pulsed, waiting in breathless anticipation as they stood at the crossroads of choice and what it could cost them. In that moment of swirling uncertainty, time stretched like the shimmering light around them. Betty looked deep into the eyes of her children, so full of love, courage, and determination. They had already ventured into the darkest corners of fear and despair together. Now, in the face of a choice that could change their lives forever, they would have to reach deep within to find the strength to endure. Remember what we fought for, she whispered, her voice trembling yet steady. It's about love, about family. We can't let fear dictate our choices. Whatever we face, we do it united. Benny looked at Betty, and then at Sarah. I want to help that boy, he said bravely, but I don't want to lose you both. Sarah nodded, eyes shimmering with determination. We won't lose each other. We're family. We've already sacrificed so much, but we have to make sure that the boy gets home safely. The boy, still hovering nearby, watched them with a knowing gaze. Are you willing to choose a part of yourselves for the greater good? He asked softly, as if he sensed their internal struggle. Betty felt her heart clench. Just weeks ago, she'd felt lost amidst her own pain and a fractured relationship with Sarah. Now, she realized that every challenge had pulled her family together, teaching them the value of trust, love, and sacrifice. I choose my fears, Betty said, her voice confident. I will let go of the past that has held me back, the worries that have kept me from truly loving. Benny glanced at his mother, then Sarah. If you're giving up your fear, then I'll give up my doubts. I've let them weigh on me for too long. I choose faith in us, in love, and our ability to fight this battle together. Tears brimmed in Sarah's eyes as she felt the power of their united front. And I will give my anger. The anger I've held on to for years over what has happened between us. It's not worth losing you both. I choose love over resentment. With that, the light surrounding them pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with their choices. The air thickened with energy, and an ethereal glow enveloped them. As they gripped each other's hands tightly, the boy smiled, his glow intensifying. Your sacrifices hold great worth. You will gain more than you lose. Without warning, the light surged forward, weaving through them, each childlike laugh and joyful memory intertwining, melding their essences into something greater. Betty felt a warm wave wash over her, like the first bloom of spring melting away the winter chill. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light released them. The boy stood before her, the shimmer of hope dazzling in his eyes. Now, with your help, I can go home. Betty looked at Sarah and Benny, tears of joy streaming down her face. They had faced darkness together, and together they had emerged stronger than ever. Let us bring you home, Betty said, compassion and resolve buoying her spirit. We want let anyone be lost to the darkness. The boy nodded, and together they walked toward the light, a beam dancing through the trees, illuminating the path home. As they stepped forward, Betty was overcome with a sense of peace, something she hadn't felt in far too long. Thank you, the boy said softly, moments before the world around them transformed in blinding brilliance. Suddenly, they were back in the park, standing alongside the terrified mother who had been searching for her son. Her eyes expressed confusion, but they quickly shifted to astonishment at the sight of her child. Mom, he cried, rushing into her embrace. Betty stepped back, her heart swelling with warmth. They had not just saved one boy, they had rekindled a connection that transcended pain. The shadows that had loomed over them faded, revealing the vibrant colors of their town enveloping them again. The meeting, the fear, the uncertainty, they all seemed so distant now. Betty turned to Sarah and Benny, who stood beside her, smiles radiating like sunlight. We did it. We faced the darkness together, she said, grateful tears spilling down her cheeks. Nothing is going to tear us apart again, Sarah said, running a hand through her hair. As the townsfolk gathered around, gratitude and relief filling the air, Betty felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known before. She had fought for the love that tied them together, and here, in the light of their victory, she knew they were whole again. Together, they turned to face their community, each blooming with the promise of a new tomorrow because love was worth every sacrifice. The echoes of lost memories danced in the breeze, but they would forge new ones, side by side. Together, now that you've reached the end of this journey, it's time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will lift your spirit. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show support for these heartfelt tales. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Your words matter. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformation. You need to subscribe now, because this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share these stories that inspire hope and love.